How much should we pay to drive? Should drivers pay to use the roads? When petrol and diesel are phased out, how will governments replace fuel duty? And what does this all mean for making motoring more sustainable? This is what we're interested in on this podcast. Those are the questions we'll discuss today, in particular road pricing, and is it an idea whose time has come? First, let me do the introductions. Well, this is Molden and Schmidt. I'm Nick Molden, Chief Executive of Emissions Analytics, a company that specializes in independent real-world emissions testing. And with me, as always, is Oliver Schmidt. Over to you.
Hi, I'm Oliver Schmidt. I've been working in the automotive industry for more than 25 years by now. I'm mostly known for my involvement in the Volkswagen Dieselgate, but there's more stuff to me than this. And yeah, let's see who's paying for the roads in the future.
And our special guest today is one of Britain's biggest brains when it comes to roads. He's Michael Dnes. Until recently, he was head of future roads technology at the Department for Transport in the UK. He's written books about the history of roads, which did and didn't get built, and now he's head of transport policy at Stonehaven Consulting. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
Before we get to road pricing, your Twitter profile says you killed one motorway and failed to build another. What happened?
Oh, well, the killing one was probably the easier of the two. There was a little motorway up in Lincolnshire to an old steelworks in, I think it's Scunthorpe, which people wanted to go and turn from a road with a blue sign to a road with a green sign, because that way they could unlock a bunch of development and housing around it. I managed to go and work with the local council to go and get it taken off the map. And I think it was a good introduction to go and say, though I did used to run a lot of road development for the government, I did actually go and at least get rid of one road from the landscape. At the same time, I was trying to go and build other ones up and down the country. In fact, one of my favourite projects in road terms overall is the A3 Hindhead Tunnel, which resulted in a large meadow full of wildflowers where there used to be the A3. The one that was trying to get built was the Oxford-Cambridge Expressway, which, had it happened, would probably be right now very helpful to the government's housing ambitions, trying to go and get growth happening in this great science arc between the two cities. But it never happened for reasons that are long and complicated and well worth going into if anyone has the time.
So, maybe on another podcast. That is there's a railway line, I think, being gradually open. So it's a really good case in point of rail versus road. But maybe a question for another day, because what I wanted to go straight to today is another area where you've talked quite a lot about, and which I see as two of the problems with the electrification of our fleet and the move to electric vehicles. And one of which is that electric vehicles are much more lightly taxed, and so it leads to a fiscal problem for governments. But the second one, which is the low marginal cost of driving, and the potential leading to a big switch towards cars and worse congestion. And for me, that, and coming from a sustainability background, is one of the problems with electrification, and which tees up the question of road pricing. You've talked and written quite a lot about road pricing. What do you see as the likely way forward to address these problems? And when you said that now is the ideal moment for road pricing, what did you mean by that?
Well, there's a couple of levels to this. So first things first, the shift from petrol vehicles to electric vehicles is a really big change to our mindset about how motoring works. At the moment, we have this assumption that drivers are one big united block. They have the same interests, whether they are in a Rolls Royce or whether they are in a tiny old second-hand car. They're all taking the same kind of petrol, which is priced at exactly the same price, that is subject to exactly the same tax. And they have become, therefore, this extremely powerful political bloc who are all looking out for one another. And everyone who, when they get to the pump, is in some beautiful democratic way somehow kind of equal. Now, that's all going to go in the near future, and going to go in a complicated way, which is not going to be a straightforward sense of people sort of slowly teleporting from one group to another group. It's going to be a period of time in which it's going to be a much stronger question of equity underpinning how we see people using the roads. Right now, if you are getting into a new electric car in the UK, you do now pay road tax. That's something that's come through in the past couple of months. But you are going to be paying no real tax on the fuel that you have. It'll depend a little bit where you've chosen to recharge. But most of the fuel that will be going into these vehicles doesn't have the equivalent of fuel duty. Now, fuel duty is a very big component of costs, and how much it's per mile will depend on the vehicle you're in. But per litre of petrol, you're dealing with, I think it's 53 pence at the moment of cost, plus the VAT on top of that, which is a huge amount of the actual cost of what you're putting into the car in the first place. That's going to lead to a really serious imbalance in how people see taxation working, because the older cars will be more likely to be petrol, more likely to be diesel, will pay that cost. The newest cars won't. And currently, electric vehicles do skew very heavily towards higher income households, both in terms of who's driving them and who wants to drive them, who thinks that they're ready to have them in their lives just yet. And you're going to have this slightly bizarre position in which the electric Rolls Royce that's driving straight out of the showroom is not paying tax in any significant way. And the old-fashioned second-hand or even fifth-hand people carrier that someone is relying upon as the only vehicle they can afford to get around in is paying really quite heavy tax. And that's going to feel like quite a different state of affairs for a couple of years. And that's where perhaps the opportunity to go and make road pricing come true starts to appear. Because for a long period of time, it's been impossible. You can't take on that block of voters in one go at the same time. But in a world where there's this difference and this sudden realization that you're moving from a heavy tax regime to a low tax regime for the richest members of the system, that starts to go and unpack that political block.
And Oliver, from the German side, are you seeing a similar dynamic? Is there discussion amongst government at all about how to address the problem of declining tax from cars?
No, it's not that big of a discussion here. So it's the same like Michael just described in the UK. If you have an electric car, you don't pay road tax. You only pay your wherever you charge your electricity. If you charge at home, it's quite cheap. Of course, there's little taxation on the electricity. We have this huge discussion here now with our new government that they want to reduce the price for electricity for customers. Now they only did it for the big industry, and they failed for the mom and pop shops and for the middle industry. So that's a big backlash for them at the moment here. Now Friedrich Merz is called a traitor and everything because he didn't lower the electricity price like he promised to. So this is one thing. But taxation wise, I don't see any plan here how to go from the current system. So we have a system here. So you pay road tax. The road tax is not that significant. If you have a modern car with not a modern emission standard, it's not significant. It's 80, 100, 150 euros a year, but not that much. The most taxation is paid, of course, with the gas or the diesel you put in your car. But there, I would challenge you, Michael. So if you have the Rolls Royce, you have your fuel consumption of 20 liters per 100 kilometers. If you have a small car, it's maybe 6. So there is a slight difference between the rich person and the one that's dependent on the car, because the one that's dependent on the car will choose his car by fuel economy, not by style or bling bling or something like this.
That's very fair. Yes, I mean, I'm conscious that I think Rolls-Royce may be the only car company whose fuel economy has gone down in 100 years.
That's quite. I'll have to check this, but that's quite very plausible.
Did they ever publish fuel economy, or was it just like their power output sufficient?
Goodness, I'm trying to remember where I got the statistics from. It's about 5 years ago I found it. I think it's in the back of a very old book about the miles per gallon you could get out of a 1911 Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost.
Okay, so you think that's the only company that has gone down? All the others have increased?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But Michael, one thing I thought you said is that we actually now have a window of opportunity around now to establish the right taxation for electric vehicles going forward, because it's clear the direction of travel of the fleet, yet there are not that many electric cars on the road. And now, so you get it right now, and you have relatively little resistance. If you were to leave it until most vehicles are EVs, then you would be slapping a new tax on EV owners. I mean, did I understand that correctly? And if so, when does that window close? And how likely is any government to make the decision before that window closes?
Yes, well, so you're absolutely right, but there's an extra element of how to go and sweeten the pill for people. The real opportunity that you've got right now is that you know that the future is going to be electric based on where the government's regulations are pointing us all towards. This is what they're going to go and move us all into in due course. But the number of electric vehicles currently out there is relatively low. And even when I first remember talking this idea around with people, it was about 2020, it was a tiny percentage. And as a consequence, it's very easy to go and make a tax change which nobody loses out from in their current vehicle. So you can say that every internal combustion engine vehicle is already being taxed through the existing system. You don't need to change the rules for them. And you can say that you'll have road pricing for electric vehicles, but you can leave out all the electric vehicles that are already on the road, so that everybody who's currently in an electric vehicle is also outside of the system. And the only people who pay the tax are hypothetical drivers of future cars, which people don't imagine themselves to be. I mean, obviously, in due course, they would fall into the system, but right now, they wouldn't feel like it was coming for them. As it happens, I was actually part of a change that did this already for petrol vehicles back in 2015. The government here changed the vehicle excise duty, the road tax that's charged, to go and actually to deal with the fact that there was a big fall-off in revenue coming from the cleaner emission standards in vehicles. When they came up with the system, as you'll know, back in the 2000s, there was a very, very low price category for extremely carbon efficient vehicles, which covered nothing when the system was set up. But over time, more and more and more vehicles were falling into the system, and more were essentially just passing out of the road tax system altogether. And this solved that problem. It sort of stopped at the hole in the bucket. But all the change was, however, scheduled to come in only in 2017, 2 years after the time in which it was being set, and all existing vehicles would continue under their current tax arrangements. So nobody paid that new tax. It's said that you can't put a new tax on motorists. It just politically isn't possible. But the fact is, not only did that new tax go on motorists, but actually the month before the change came in is the highest month on record for car sales in the UK, as everyone tried to get in on the old system. And nobody complained when the new system came into being. So it can be done if you are patient and if you figure out how to go and make sure that everybody doesn't feel as if you're coming for their car right now. And that's the opportunity we've got.
And how long have we got? That situation persists?
Not very long, it would be my suggestion. I did a report on this back in October, and I somewhat arbitrarily said that let's think about there being a time in which you have about fewer than 10% of the vehicles in a country being already electric. That it's probably worthwhile to simply buy off that opposition by saying you are going to be free from the system forever. You will be the smug person driving the uncharged vehicle through a sea of late adopters. Congratulations, well done you. You can live happily ever after in your vehicle. 10% would be hit in the UK probably next year, I think, won't it? Certainly within the next year or two. So if you're thinking of that as being a magical cutoff, then there really isn't much time at all. And it might even be that last year was the last year in which it could realistically be introduced. So we're talking a matter of months, probably. Certainly no more than 2 years for the UK to try and do it. Other countries have longer. Some countries have already passed the point at which it can't be done. Norway, for example, this wouldn't work mathematically.
So the question I have is, for how long is your tax exempt in the UK? If I buy an electric car for how long am I tax exempt? Forever?
Well, under the model I put in the paper I put out in October, forever. Why not?
So here it's different. We are exempt for 4 years. After 4 years, I have to pay road tax on my electric vehicle. It's kind of a subsidy when you buy the car. It's when you buy the car new, you have 4 years, you are tax exempt. Then after 4 years, you pay an equivalent to the road tax you pay on a gas car. So there is a tax coming for you. So when you buy the car, it's 4 years. Then I have to get my next new car to be tax exempt again. So
yes. So I think, if I'm remembering rightly, the road tax will now apply for electric vehicles from the moment it's purchased. So that it used to be that they were tax exempt for the whole of their time. This is one of the rare examples of us bringing something inside the tax system is actually those existing electric vehicles.
So there's no grandfathering. So with the way, so this year with road tax applying to electric vehicles, it applies to all of them, not just new purchases. So that doesn't conform to your idea, Michael. But I mean, going back to what you said right at the beginning about the Rolls-Royce example, actually, from an environmental point of view, isn't there a really good reason why electric vehicles are lightly taxed? I mean, shouldn't they be really lightly taxed because they're really good for the environment? So shouldn't we try and not tax them to create the right environmental outcomes?
So I can see a lot of arguments in favour of that, and personally, I agree with them in a number of ways. I would say probably two small caveats, though, that I think are worth considering. First of all, I think paying no tax per mile has some implications, some consequences, and that structurally having at least some method for doing this, which is going to be smarter than just putting a heavy cost either on the car through more taxation or some kind of tax on electricity, which is really hard to operationalise. It will be a win for the system to know how you could do this and do this in a relatively smart way. People hate road pricing, but they probably hate almost all of the alternatives worse. And again, I don't really see a world in which you can not charge the rich and charge the poor heavily. I think that's going to be politically very hard to try and do. So just getting the structures down to sort that is a bit of a win. Secondly, I mean, there are still environmental impacts from a variety of cars, which including electric ones, and those do need to be priced into the system somewhere. The one drawback, though, that I became very aware of shortly after annoyingly publishing a paper on this subject matter is just how much of a divergence has come through in recent years, in recent months around the time of the publication of that, between home charging and public charging in the UK. It's now reached the point at which the gap between home charging and public charging, even the cheapest public charging, is a factor of about 6. And one of the core arguments of the paper that I wrote back then was that you have such a saving being made going to electric that it doesn't really hurt anyone psychologically to go and hand a little bit of that back to the government to go and make sure the roads keep running. That kind of will feel okay, and it will feel okay only on that one time you go electric for the first time, because it won't feel like an extra cost. It'll just feel less of a saving, and psychologically that's much more workable. I now realise, however, that with where we've got to very recently on public charging, that actually only applies to about 50 to 60% of people. And for the other 40 to 50%, actually it's going to feel like that's a much more impactful cost on them. And therefore it may not work as well as it used to do.
Yeah,
in Germany, Oliver, what proportion? Yeah. What's the situation with public charging in terms of the price differential, and what proportion of EV owners rely on public chargers?
It's kind of the Wild West. So you have if you charge at home, you have the two possibilities. You whether have solar panels on your roof, you charge while the sun is shining, and you are at home. So this is one. The other one is you have your wall box at home. There was a period of time when you got subsidies for installing a wall box. So most of people have a wall box at home and don't even use it. But then you pay your around 30 cents per kilowatt hour, which is our average price for electricity here. And then when you go into public charging, you see everything between 40 cents if you go to an AC charger. But if you then go to a DC charger, it goes up to €2. If you have your recharge on the motorway, you go up to €2 per kilowatt hour. So that's what everybody is trying to avoid. So what's selling really good here and is not losing any value, where the car with the highest residual value here are those Teslas that have lifetime charging. A colleague of mine has one. It has, 200,000 kilometers by now, and he bought it 2 years ago or so. He paid €35,000. It's stable. He can sell it for the same price. Because after a certain period of time, even the new battery, you can afford it. It's crazy.
I quietly wonder whether those vehicles are going to have an incredibly long afterlife, and kind of like the ship of Theseus, every single part will be replaced one after the other, simply to keep it on the road, to keep its privilege in position.
Have you ever heard of Johnny Smith, the Late Break Show? Famous YouTuber out of the UK. So his name is Johnny Smith. He has, 600,000 followers on YouTube. He just bought a Tesla. He bought a Tesla for £5,000 that failed the MOT. He fixed it, got it through the MOT. It has 270 or 280,000 miles, but he still has free charging. So he paid. It was not big of a fix. It was some relays, some linkage in the drivetrain that he had to replace. For less than 1,000, he got the car fixed, and now he's running this car for free. So.
Yeah. For the older listeners, the other metaphor to use would be Trigger's broom for fans of BBC sitcom called Only Fools and Horses. But it's exactly the same principle, that these golden vehicles with lifetime cost advantages might keep going forever. Yeah. Michael, the objection or the concern I have with the road pricing, and I think which is very politically sensitive, is the intrusion into people's behaviour. And as we saw with the Oasis tickets, the potential for dynamic pricing offends people and can be used for gouging if wrongly deployed. And the democratic controls can be quite weak and abused. I published a book last year called Critical Mass, which suggested we should use, yes, per mile charging, but based simply on the delta between odometer readings between periodic technical inspection. So it had no knowledge of where you drove, when you drove, etc. But it was nevertheless a per distance charge. What do you feel about that as an alternative? Could you plug that notion into your basic idea and actually have something which is much less politically controversial?
So you're going to have an inherent tension here between trying to charge people based on where they're driving, i.e. keeping them away from the congested areas or charging them more for being in the most congested spaces, and that level of privacy, as you would normally imagine it. If you're going to have a box that's going ping, 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 ping all the time, telling you where that vehicle is, then it's going to be telling you locational information, and that's somewhat unavoidable normally. But this is the rare occasion when I can actually say that this is something you can solve with blockchain. And it's true, and it's not just somebody saying something nonsense to go and pretend they know more about technology than they do. Actually, the technology that underpins crypto is very much adaptable to this purpose, being able to go and create the information about where something is and how much it owes the system without actually saying where car XYZ123 has actually been. And you can figure out a decentralized model for payments so that you wouldn't even need the information to come anywhere near government in order to go and work that through. I did a project for leaving government called the National Parking Platform, which tried to figure out how you would deal with bilateral payment reconciliation across a bunch of parking apps and parking providers without it all having to go through a big funding machine in the middle, because that would take all of the costs and risks onto government's balance sheet, which nobody wanted. So therefore, you could figure out how to go and create a decentralized payment model which would keep all this information out of anyone's hands. And we did this
without being too computationally expensive and therefore high in energy cost of data centers.
In theory, it should be okay for that. Although, again, I mean, there are those who know more about blockchain than I do, and I would happily defer to them on the precise technical specifics. But if it's merely the question of knowing where you've been, that is something we can solve with technology. And we did find also with the polling that we did around this in, I think it was September, October time, that there is quite an interesting generational gap as well. That you have a bunch of people who are, broadly speaking, over the age of about 40-ish, who are very concerned about the privacy angle on this. It notably changes when you get down into younger demographics.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's partly the fact that people have been carrying around iPhones their entirety of their lives, and the idea that they're being tracked is just not news to them. It's something that they're pretty comfortable with.
Well, is that the case in Germany? Because obviously Germany is a country that is very sensitive about privacy and is quite an outlier in worldwide terms in that. But is the same age differential seen in Germany? Are young people much more relaxed about it?
I think it's more a mindset question. I don't see it as an age. So you have young people that refuse to share their data with their smartphone. So they turn all the services off, and you have old people that heavily embrace this technology. So I don't see really their big gap. I would say there might be the gap in the boomer. The boomer to Generation X, there might be this gap, but everybody Generation X and below, Y and Z and whatever they are called, I think I don't see the big issue there. And most, if you look then at the age, a boomer is 4 years older than I am, so they are turning 60 now, so they are getting out of the scope. Yes, we know 80 is the new 60, but they are still on the road. But even if I look at my parents-in-law, they have their smartphones with them all the time. They have their Apple tablets. They have everything. So they get tracked all the time. So I don't see the big issue there. Yeah, of course, you will always have the people. We have I think it's called DSVGO, our heavy regulation here. So if you get an email from somebody you don't want from, you can say, never write me an email again, or I will sue you under this regulation. So that's pretty heavy, but I don't see the big issue there. Most of the people are used to their smartphone and getting tracked.
Do you mind me asking as well, given how much technology in cars now does connect a vehicle to the internet and to a wider universe of data, is that permeating through in attitudes in Germany? Do people feel concerned about their car reporting back where they are?
So the thing is, it's the law that your car is equipped with these emergency call buttons by now. So your car is online all the time anyhow. I think it's more that people are not aware of it. The technology is in the car. The car needs to be able to communicate and call for assistance if you're in whatever emergency situation, accident or heart attack, whatever. And I think it's even more appreciated. It's more this better safe than sorry thinking that sets in there, that got adopted from the US. So I think this sets in, and people are happy that this technology is there, and they are not that aware what this technology can do with them.
Okay, and we're drawing towards the close, but there is one other question I wanted to ask Michael, which were, and I guess it follows on from the sort of timing of how you introduce the right taxation on electric vehicles, but it's where it seems to be going in the opposite direction in London. So there's something called the cleaner vehicle discount, which obviously you know very well in London, which gives various perks to EV, or quite significant perks to EV drivers, but which is sunsetting at the end of this year, I believe. And at the moment, the Mayor of London is letting it go, and so the benefits will disappear. Which obviously, what we're interested in, why is that the case? So at a time where everyone else is thinking about how to incentivize the uptake of EVs in the appropriate way, why is London going rapidly in the other direction? Is it something as crude as Transport for London needs the money, or is there something else deeper going on?
Well, Transport for London aren't allowed to say they need the money because the law is very clear that they can't go and run a congestion charge on that basis. So if they happen to get, say, £100 million in extra revenue, that's just a delightful bonus for them doing their job well.
I can say it though, and now you can as well.
Indeed, I guess that's true. Yes, no. So for listeners who aren't based in London, a little bit of background. London famously has a congestion charge. It's very centre. It costs £15 to go inside for the day, and that's going to rise to £18 under the proposals that just come out recently. But if you're driving a purely battery electric vehicle, then you get something called the cleaner vehicle discount, which removes that cost for you. You can go in for free. Now, TfL are worried, understandably, that with the increasing uptake of electric vehicles, that's going to eventually lead to a situation in which you could conceivably lose the power of the congestion charge to reduce congestion. And they are looking to try and end this exemption altogether. They're going to bring back about 10% of its value under some recent proposals, but 90% of that extra cost is going to go on. What we've been finding digging into this recently, though, is that actually, quietly, TfL has managed to rewrite the rulebook on congestion charging with this cleaner vehicle discount. When I started digging into this, imagined that the cleaner vehicle discount was just some kind of press release policy. Lots of the stuff you get around supporting greener vehicles is really just done to go and have a good news story and to show the civic authorities being very pro-environment, and they're very happy and they'll get on with the next thing and they won't worry about what's the consequences. And if it works, that's great. If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. It turns out the cleaner vehicle discount has been unbelievably effective over the past couple of years in shifting a chunk of London's vehicle fleet across, particularly private hire vehicles, so minicabs, Ubers, other ride-hail app-based transport services. They tightened up the rules to be battery electric vehicle only in October 2021. And two remarkable things about this. First of all, in the 12 months that followed from that, the share of London's central area vehicle traffic went from 5% battery electric vehicle to nearly 25%. That's a 12-month period seeing a five-fold increase. That doesn't happen in transport data. That's off the charts. I've asked everybody I've shared this with to say, could you give me an example of a bigger vehicle shift in 12 months? And no one's yet answered me. This might be genuinely the most powerful electric vehicle uptake I've ever seen in the central area. But the other interesting thing is that it isn't just the central area. But if you look at the chart of traffic in inner London outside of the congestion charge area and of outer London more broadly, over the same 12-month period, they also have their own spikes in electric vehicle uptake amongst these private hire vehicles. So that you're seeing a citywide impact on air quality. Now, when we tell stories about how congestion charges work, it keeps you out of the area where the charge is. It keeps the congestion down. But what this seems to be showing us is that actually, if you're using it to specifically incentivize a fleet shift, you get a really powerful air quality effect too. We reckon about 93% of the air quality benefits that have come off the back of this policy have happened outside of the central area, which is a complete inversion of how we think congestion charges work. And yeah, I mean, City Hall are saying they're going to switch this off. We would at least like them to take a moment to think, This seems to be working incredibly well by global standards. Are you sure this is the moment to pull the plug? Because you've actually got other fleet shifts you want to try and do. It's worked really well for private hire vehicles because the level of incentive has been perfect at switching the maths for private hire vehicle drivers. When they make the choice, am I going electric or internal combustion engine, they can see that they will save money going electric. That hasn't applied to vans yet, and vans have almost exactly the same use profile from what we understand. And for what we're standing, we think it would be great to keep this going until you've got to close to 100% of both private hire vehicles and electric vans, and also probably any other commercial traffic in the centre, because that's going to have a much bigger benefit for air quality across London. It's going to have a cost on the City Hall's treasury.
So it's been a victim of its own success.
Pretty much, yeah.
Do you have other benefits for electric vehicles in the cities? So we don't have congestion charges here, but a lot of major cities adopting free parking for electric vehicles.
Yeah, so we tend to have discount residence parking for electric vehicles. Some boroughs in London can have cheaper parking for EVs as well. But yeah, this is much more substantial in terms of the cost impact. I mean, actually, it led to Uber making London their number one place for EV electrification for electrifying their fleet in the whole world. They spent about £140 million in total on trying to go and shift their particular fleet. Now, to be clear, that happened on a time frame that means it definitely wasn't the thing causing this big jump in 2021. But nevertheless, the principle of the thing is it's shown London to be really a world leader in this and has brought money in and has changed people's minds and is actually doing a really good job, which it hasn't got any credit for yet.
So if TfL are acting rationally, then the need to fund public transport is greater than the need to subsidize the take-up of electric vehicles. So from a pure practical policy point of view, they need the money, otherwise it'll suck money out of public transport in London. Is that fair, or is that an oversimplification?
So if City Hall were to be doing that, they would be sort of breaking the law a little bit. So the legislation...
Can you break the law a little bit?
Well, I mean, I have to be careful what I say. I like having friends in TfL. They're nice people. I don't want to accuse them of anything that's too ghastly. But the law on the Transport Act 2000, under which the congestion charge exists, is clear about the goals that have to be at the heart of what the congestion charge is doing. It's not enough to just go and use it as an excuse to gouge money out of motorists, because if you were to do that, believe me, it could be a lot more expensive. You really could go and charge a lot just to go and have the convenience and benefit of driving in lots of parts of London. Here, it has to be a specific congestion goal, and as of a few years ago, also air quality and decarbonisation, which is unfortunate here because, again, it tends to be working rather well for air quality and decarbonisation, and it doesn't seem at this stage in time to be affecting congestion all that much. So City Hall are in a little bit of a bind on this one, and I'm going to be interested to see quite how they explain this one when we have put in all the evidence that we're gathering for their consultation right now.
Great. Well, that... sorry for pressing you on that, and very diplomatic answer, and I really appreciate that. And I think that's probably a good moment to draw a close to this. So wanted to say, Michael, thank you very much indeed, and sharing your wealth of knowledge, and Oliver, as ever, thank you so much. So hopefully that's another aspect on this very complicated, knotty problem of sustaining our whole way of life and freedom to motor while making it also sustainable financially, but crucially sustainable environmentally. So thank you again to both of you, and hope everyone enjoyed listening, and tune in next time. Thank you very much.